I trusted them with every ounce of my being. They knew my deepest, darkest secrets about everything and turned my world upside down.
From Mamamia, I'm Mia Friedman, and you're listening to No Filter, a podcast where I talk to people with an interesting story to tell. Have you ever been bullied online or trolled? Ever sent or received a nude photo? Ever been asked to send a stranger a photo of your feet? Did you know there is a Tinder-style app for teens that's used by kids as young as primary school age? The digital world is hectic. And when you have kids in your life, it can feel like it's all so hard and so scary and so difficult to even understand what's going on half the time, let alone set rules for kids to follow. I work in digital media and I still don't really understand how TikTok works, and don't even get me started on Snapchat. I swear that thing has been deliberately made to keep adults out. I don't even understand it. We are the first generation of adults to have to manage a whole world for kids that we have no personal experience of. A few months ago, I met a woman called Kirra Pendergast, and I exhaled after our conversation. Kirra worked in cybersecurity and IT business consulting for more than 25 years before she turned her attention to keeping kids safe on social media. That's actually the name of her business, and her purpose is to educate and support people of all ages to use social media safely and positively, but particularly kids. Kirra has presented to more than 500,000 students, parents and teachers in thousands of schools across Australia. And she also has her own very personal experience with cyberbullying as an adult that has given her enormous insight and understanding into just how devastating it can be for kids. Together, Kirra and Mamamia have created a toolkit for anyone who wants to keep their kids safe. It's called the Safe On Social Toolkit, and it's a series of online resources, short videos and written cheat sheets that you can look at on your phone that will answer every question you have, as well as a bunch that you didn't even know to ask. I'll tell you more about it at the end of this interview, but first, I want you to listen to Kirra. Be warned, there are some confronting aspects to our conversation. I can't pretend that there aren't things happening online that will make your hair curl, but that's why I urge you to listen, whether you've got kids or not. Oh, and spoiler alert, here's something Kirra explains. The biggest risk to kids' online safety is often things that their parents do without even realising it. Here's Kirra. Kirra, most days of the week you're in schools talking to students or teachers or parents about what goes on online. And one of the questions that you ask when you speak to students is whether anyone has been asked by a stranger for a photo of their feet. Tell me about that.
So that came up about 2 years ago when I was working on the mid-north coast in New South Wales, and 2 girls in grade 5 had received a message from someone asking for photos of their feet.
Where did they receive that message?
So through direct message on Instagram, which you can't turn off. So, kids are curious. When they get a direct message request, when they open up Instagram, it comes up in the top right-hand corner. So, of course, they're going to click on it. And when someone asked these 2 girls for photos of their feet, they complied. And one of them in particular, what had happened was as soon as she responded with the photo of her feet, this person came back asking for some really inappropriate photos. In fact, they said, "Send me another photo. This time lift up your top or I'm going to hurt your little brother."
Oh, my God.
So the little girl didn't have her account set to private in that case, so they'd been able to see quite a bit about her life. But, it rapidly stepped into what we call sextortion, and it was reported immediately and dealt with. But, since then, Mia, what's happened is I've used that as somewhat of a live survey to find out what's going on. And I'll ask a room full of kids, if I ask high school kids, I flat out ask them, who's been asked for sex or inappropriate photos? And 90% of the room will put their hand up. And then I say, who's been asked for photos of their feet? And there's at least 5 to 10 kids in the room that respond with their hand up saying yes. And they all burst into fits of laughter because they don't understand what it actually is. And it can be first stage of online grooming of someone trying to build a kind of trust relationship with them.
Wow. So you've spoken to other kids who've been in this situation where they've just innocently sent photos of their feet, and how's it escalated?
It usually happens, like, I get kids in every single school I speak in. In fact, in the last 2 years since that happened with those two little girls, there has been not one school where someone hasn't put their hand up when I've asked that question, and I do at least 3 sessions a day with students. So you see the teachers around the room just look absolutely horrified when I ask the question, and they're actually seeing live how this is happening and how many kids it's actually happening to. Another one that I had, again, a young boy this time who was 12, who'd been asked for a photo of his feet. He complied after a great big story came through on direct messenger from someone in the Ukraine who was pretending to be a podiatrist and said that he was studying feet of European children and needed the photos of a young Australian surfer's feet to complete his studies. So in this case, the young man took a photo of his feet, sent it back and said, "Here you go, mate." And the guy responded with, "I think I'm in love with you." And I saw all the screenshots because, Mr. 12 had been carrying them around on his device for 6 months because he didn't know what to do with it until I spoke about it that day. And he came up to me after the session quite embarrassed about it. And he said, "Look," and gave me all the screenshots. So this guy said, "I'm 37, I think I'm in love with you." Mr. 12 responded with, "Mate, I'm just a kid, you're sick." And then this guy started sending photos of him and another guy sitting around the table eating dinner with a group of young boys. So Mr. 12 responded with some of the most colourful language I've ever seen. And because he'd responded like that, he was too scared to tell his parents because he thought he was going to get in trouble for swearing. It was almost identical what had happened with the other two little girls, because the one, when she got asked for a photo lifting up her top, had responded with 3 letters, WTF, and thought she was going to get in trouble for swearing. So kids often don't see the danger there because it is so common. There's so many contact points that can happen, and it looks seemingly innocent, but it can actually be really sinister.
Kirra, you used the word sextortion. Can you explain what that is in the context of kids online?
Yeah, so sextortion is something that, it happens to kids and it happens to adults as well. So it is if someone sends a nude, for example, so we see a lot of that, obviously, that's been all over the media lately. If someone sends a nude, they might get told if they don't send another one, it's going to be published all over the internet, or if they don't send $400 to this bank account within the next 24 hours, it's going to be published all over the internet, those kinds of threats. So it's extortion, but it's sex-based online.
So with an adult, it might be money-based or public humiliation. With kids, what you're saying is like the feet are used, so they might ask 20 kids that to see who will send them a photo of their feet, and then it escalates from there. And is it that the kids get trapped because they don't want their parents to take their phone away, so they don't want to tell their parents that anything dodgy is going on? Is that right?
Exactly right. Exactly. They're terrified of having their device taken away. And a lot of parents aren't educated in this space, and that's, completely fine as well. But a lot of parents will use the phone as a disciplinary tool, which is the biggest mistake that they could make, and they don't even realise they're making a mistake. And when I talk about that with parent sessions, I'm very careful not to make them scared and things like that, because we don't want parents to be fearful of this space. We want them to feel empowered and know what to do when things go wrong in this space. So if we're talking to them about disciplinary things around the phone, it's more set a healthy boundary around it. Like the rule in your house might be phones out of the bedroom at 6:30 at night, and if a child's then caught with it in their bedroom at 7, then take it off them for a week. We definitely want discipline, but it needs to align with the use of the device. Don't take the device off them for forgetting to take the bin out, for example, because that's the quickest way to drive these conversations that you want to be having completely underground.
So one of the hardest things I think for this generation of parents is trying to parent your children who are living in a world you never lived in and don't understand. I mean, there's that expression, we used to live on farms and then we lived in cities and now we live online. And, you know, Gen Xers particularly and even millennials didn't grow up marinating in this in the same way. We're not necessarily digital natives in the same way our kids are. So it's rare that you have to parent your kids and set rules about things that your kids know more about than you do. Is that where so many parents trip up?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think a lot of parents think they know more than they do in this space because they haven't been educated on it. They haven't done anything other than use Facebook a lot themselves. And so people think that they know everything in this space. But I can tell you, to watch the jaws drop around the room when I speak to parents, when little things like what we just discussed with feet and things like that come up, you just see jaws dropping around the room in a heartbeat because it's that unknown and they don't realise just how kids deal with it. You know, most of them will just laugh it off. They don't think there's anything wrong, and often there's not. Like, these people might be way overseas, but then if it does come down to things like sextortion and things like that, kids need some guidance. And parents just being users of social media themselves doesn't mean that they fully understand the risk in the space and how to mitigate it.
Okay, so I'm going to throw some questions at you to explain some things to me. What's a Finsta account?
That term's not actually used very much at all anymore, to tell you the truth.
So I'm old-fashioned. I thought I was like really clever because a Finsta is a fake Insta. See, that's like when your parents say it's groovy.
Yeah, it is like that.
See, I can't keep up, Kirra.
In a glossary, you would see the word Finsta. If you said Finsta in front of a room full of high school students, they'd laugh you out of the room.
Well, I'm used to that.
They have what they call their privy accounts or private. They'll have a spam account. They'll have an account often in their real name. They'll have one in a fake name because they can have 5 accounts all tied into the one on Instagram. So there's multiple. They use meme accounts, all sorts of things.
And why do they? Why?
I don't know. They just do. I think they like to kind of separate bits and pieces so they could kill one off pretty quickly if they do something silly and get in trouble. We often tell them all the time not to use their real name in there. I tell kids, like, use something like Popcorn Fairy or whatever, but keep your real name out of your Instagram bio because you can't ever make that private. So that's completely public all the time, and too much information in there is just giving away too much information to complete strangers.
What about TikTok? Is TikTok safe? That's something that a lot of young kids are using it. How old do kids have to be to use TikTok, and is it safe just in general?
Well, the age recommendations are all guidelines. They're not actually law in this space. They're not law in this country. And what it's put in place by the Child Online Privacy and Protection Act in the US. So they're the ones that issue fines for people that store and retain the information of children under the age of 13 for the purposes of sales and marketing. So TikTok fits into the 13 plus category. Personally, I think it should be 17 plus because of the content on there. Again, a lot of people think that we need to keep kids private and make them safe and make sure no one's contacting them. And yeah, that's right. But we also need to look at things the other way as well. What is your child seeing? There's a double meaning to everything on the internet. An innocent search for a science project around black holes, for example, or an alternative name for cat. You know, all those sorts of things that come up in innocent searches by little kids bombarded with pornography. Same thing's happening on TikTok. TikTok is notoriously insecure. It's caught up right in the middle of the trade war between the US and China at the moment. So there's a whole heap of finger pointing around international security issues and all of those kinds of things. But the fact of the matter is there's 1.5 billion people on it. The horse is bolted. Kids love it. And so you need to learn how to keep them safe. So making sure their privacy settings are up to scratch, that location services are turned off. If you have a really little kid, you go through with them and make sure that you know every single person that's following them, check everyone they're following. They don't even need to download the app to their phone. They can just look at it online, or there's YouTube channels full of TikTok videos. So it's coming up everywhere. It's unavoidable. So we're better off keeping them safe than scaring parents in this space. We don't need to be as fearful as people finger point and carry on here, but there's no such thing as bad parenting. It's we do what we can. So as long as we're keeping our kids safe.
What actually is TikTok?
TikTok used to be called Musical.ly.
Oh.
It was another app. So it's rebranded. It was bought by a huge Chinese company called ByteDance. And what it is short form video content. So 15 seconds or so, and they lip sync along to songs, or they can voice over things. So you'll hear some pretty disgusting things on there. If you download the app and just scroll up, you start to see video after video after video, and it's kind of weirdly addictive. You get caught in this washing machine spin of complete disaster videos that you're watching, and as an adult or an older teenager, it's pretty hysterical. But some of the content is also completely atrocious. There's some violence against women. There's violence against animals. There's porn. I've seen some pretty full-on stuff on there as well. So we need to protect kids from what they're seeing, as well as what or who could be contacting them.
What can be so hard as a parent is to know kind of who things are for, because you think, oh, TikTok, yeah, seems like there's some cute things on it. What are the sort of the ages that a kid should have access to a device, the age that a kid should be on Instagram? Because I know there are the age recommendations on the apps, but kids tend to be hassling for them years and years before those age recommendations kick in. And one of the things they say is all my friends are on it. So as a parent, you don't want your kid to miss out.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that? And what do you do? Help me, Kirra.
Oh, my God. Well, firstly, I'm putting a great big covenant around the fact I'm not a parenting expert, okay? I'm not a parenting expert. I have a tech background, a big cybersecurity background. But obviously, respect the age recommendation guidelines. They are put there for a reason, okay? It's a really good idea. People need to remember they're a parent first. I think in this space it's often forgotten. You need to parent hard. And if you don't, you get into a world of hurt very, very quickly here for caving in on all my friends are doing it. You know, I remember having that conversation with my mother about shaving my legs, you know.
Same.
But all my friends do. And well, Mum's like, well, you're not. And you know, so I've still got scars up my legs from badly shaving them. But, you know, same with smoking, all of those things. You wouldn't let your child do that. So it's like holding that line as a parent, as difficult as it is, stick with the age recommendation guidelines as much as you possibly can. Most of them are 13 plus. That's usually the kickoff point. 13 plus is also often bantered around for a child getting a device at that age, but obviously there's different reasons why people have devices younger. And then also we want to guide them properly because a lot of them have iPads and things at school. So they have access to devices. And, you know, every time you're in a cafe or whatever, you see kids sitting there playing on mum and dad's phone so mum and dad can have a bit of a break and a conversation kind of situation. So we've got all of that to take into consideration as well. But, you know, first and foremost, we've really got to analyse the maturity of a child. It does cause some anxiety issues if they're viewing things too young that they're not emotionally capable of dealing with, like, as I said before, violence against animals. Like even the anxiety for kids over the last 2 weeks has been through the roof with the amount of burnt koalas that are all over social media. All of those things we need to take into consideration on how they're affecting a child. And especially with things like Instagram, as they get older, and are using Instagram, they're scrolling through show reels of people's lives that don't often fully exist. They're over-edited, they're heavily filtered, they're all the perfect moments that are going on. And so we have a generation of kids that are trying to live up to a life that doesn't actually exist and create the same thing.
Kirra, what are some of the sneaky ways that kids get around parents' rules?
Oh, easy. They share accounts with friends at school.
What do you mean?
So if one friend's allowed Snapchat and the other one isn't, or the same with Instagram, they'll create an account together and then they'll share the passwords and they'll use it on whichever child's device is allowed to use it.
Oh, that's sneaky.
Yeah, it happens so often. And then if they have a little fight, then one's got access to everything. One's got access to all of their private stuff that they store in the, your eyes only section of Snapchat, for example, and then start sending that off to whoever, and it causes bullying, and kids don't realise that by sharing their passwords they can't, as much as they want to deny it was them that sent out something, they can't prove that it wasn't. So it's really dangerous behaviour. So a part of me often thinks it's actually better for kids to have their own account and be heavily guided by their parents rather than trying to sneak around and do something with their friends at school where then it's carte blanche, they're doing whatever they want.
Most parents and most adults are aware of things like Snapchat and YouTube and Instagram, and no young people are on Facebook really, are they?
Oh, you'd be surprised.
Oh, is it coming back into fashion? I thought it was just they all cleared off when their parents and their grandparents got on.
Well, it's been classified social media for old people, which I'm reminded of often. But it's surprising. In senior year groups at schools, I see a lot of Facebook. In regional communities, I see a load of Facebook. The younger kids tend to use Snapchat and Instagram, and as they get a little bit older, they start to use Facebook again. It comes and goes in waves, and it's very, very heavily based on socioeconomics, where they actually are geographically, like it's all through the Riverina and New England and everywhere, they're all using Facebook. So it's up and down depending on the location.
And what are some of the newer apps that are around? We mentioned TikTok before. There are some that you've mentioned to me that I'd never even heard of, like Yubo and Likey. What are they?
So Likey is very similar to TikTok, but it's a bit like the Wild West of TikTok. So what it does is grabs a whole heap of video content off TikTok and reposts it on the Likey app, and it has very, very limited privacy on there. So that's another reason why you should adhere to the 13 plus rule on TikTok and making sure the account is set to private, because otherwise they're grabbing it and pulling it into a plethora of other apps. I see the same thing happening on Instagram, and they turn up on all of these other little picture apps that are all over the place. And when I get kids in my sessions to Google themselves, they all come up and go, oh my God, I'm on this app and this app and this app, and I've never had an account with them. And it's because they're not set to private on their main apps, that all their content's being gathered and ripped off from there. So the other apps that are out and about and come and go, Yubo is one of them. It used to be called Yellow. It went through a whole big thing a couple of years ago where a lot of kids were using it. Now it's back again. So we call it Tinder for teenagers. You literally swipe left or right to meet people or the friends you didn't know you had, the app says in that space. So that one's quite scary, because literally when I was doing some research around it, I jumped online, set up an account, which I have now gotten rid of, but set up an account, put in my age, said that I was born in the year 2004 to make myself 15, and I was asked for no age verification or anything. So I was straight in talking to a whole heap of teenagers if I wanted to. Obviously I didn't, but very, very easy to do. So Yubo's one to watch out for. The other ones are, of course, all of the anonymous apps that are out there. There's Wishbone, there's Telonym, there's Saraha. They all come and go as well, and where you'll see them is in an Instagram bio. They'll have a link where it just says kirra.telonym.com, and then when you open it up, it's like leave a constructive message, or they rate each other on how they look, or everything they share in there is anonymous. So it's a lot of bleeding heart, woe is me kind of stuff that goes up on there as well. So there's a lot of those kinds of apps that come and go all the time. So they're definitely ones to watch out for.
You've also talked to me about proud parenting syndrome and how often one of the biggest dangers to kids' security and privacy online are their own parents. How does that work? How have you seen that play out?
That works in a lot of different ways, actually. So from the school assembly, parents coming to school, taking photos of their kids, posting it on social media without 1 second of thought for other children in the background. Parents always are asked to sign a media release document at schools. So this is permission for their child's image to be used on the website, on the school's social media pages, all of those kinds of things. So parents usually tick a box saying yes or no in that case, and then completely forget when they come to school and take all of those photos at an assembly or an award ceremony or whatever, post it on their often public social media accounts like Instagram, and don't think about the kids at all in the background. And one of the cases we've had up here, up in northern New South Wales, was a child who was photographed was actually in a witness protection program and was posted to a local community Facebook page. So it caused all sorts of issues, and it also causes a huge issue for schools from a duty of care perspective. So I always advise schools to remind parents at the beginning of assembly to put something in school newsletters, all of those things, because it is that proud parent thing. And the other side of it, the complete flip side, is taking a photo of your own child, holding a school certificate up or in school uniform and tagging them into the location where the school is. So literally any random creep in a car could pull up outside a school, search the name of the school on Instagram, for example, or search places, which will drop down a pin to the exact location of that school, go through, find a photo of a child, and in under a minute you could literally find out where the family went on holidays, what's the name of the cat, what year the child's in, what their name is, enough information that if they walked out the front of the school at 3:00 in the afternoon, you could be hugely convincing to a young child that you actually know their parents.
What would they say?
So, say, for example, if I pulled up outside of a major school, did that search, got all the details, I could easily walk up to a child and say, darling, the cat's been hit by a car. Mummy had to take him to the vet, so she asked me to pick you up. And if the little person asked me, how do you know my mum? I could say, oh, don't you remember me from Nippers? We've been friends with your parents for about 15 years now. We were all on holidays together in Hawaii last year. Darling, did you have fun when you were in the snow? Like literally, you can get that whole story off Instagram in under a minute if an account's not set to private. And the other one, of course, is hashtagging kids. So hashtag, Johnny and Sarah or hashtag whoever, and then being able to search that specific hashtag for kids and start to map their whole life. The other side of that one, of course, is what if your child grows up and wants to be in defence or in police or, an international spy, and you've built a whopping big digital footprint for them without their approval that could cause them some issues as an adult.
Tell me a little bit about schools because, if it's challenging for parents with 1 or 2 or 3 children, how is it for schools with hundreds and sometimes thousands of students, all with devices, all getting up to Lord knows what? How are schools and teachers handling it?
Look, schools handle it really well, to be honest. They're all well educated in this space, but, still some things come up from time to time. I get phone calls every single day of the week. I had one yesterday afternoon. I've had 3 this morning from schools asking advice when really tricky stuff comes up. And the latest trend in this space is masturbation videos being self-produced by teenagers and circulated around school. It seems to be the in thing at the moment around the 14-year age group.
So girls and boys videoing themselves doing that and then sending them to who? Sending them to like a romantic partner?
Yep. Or a romantic interest.
So this is like the hunting come to life, that SBS show.
Yes.
Why do they do that, Kirra? Help us understand.
I know, I don't know. But thankfully every case that has been brought to my attention and then referred to the police or the Safety Commissioner's office is every single one of them has been, thankfully, the child has kept their head out of it. Like, I don't see these videos because I don't want to, number one, and because it's highly illegal for that to be transmitted. But when I ask the teacher who's been either told about it or shown it, or in the multitude of cases where I've had parents call me or kids come up to me after my session and go, "Miss, I made a video," and now I just sit there and go, "Was it a masturbation video?" Yes. It was, because I know what's coming. And I'm like, what's happening? And I had, a girl a few weeks ago that was being extorted for money, or the video would be released everywhere. I've had another girl who had the video circulated, that got shut down, and it re-emerged again a long time later. But every single one of these cases, the kids have kept their head out of the shot. So, they've all said you can't tell that it's me. But, of course, the rumour mill goes around school and it gets circulated heavily and they all kind of know who it is anyway. But long-term effect of that is always my concern. So, in a couple of cases I've actually said to kids, well, if it keeps coming up when you're an adult, you deny it.
Mm. Yeah, it's something that's just so normal and such a generational divide, so that if you're over 35 or 40, there will probably be no nudes of you out there on devices, including your own. But if you're under that age, it's very highly likely that there will be. And I think that the answer, we sort of say, well, if you don't take the picture, it can't be used against you, which technically is true. But I think when I was speaking to the producer of The Hunting, she kind of helped me understand in her conversations with young people is that they see it as a very safe way to explore their sexuality, because no one's touching them and they're not touching anyone. They're at home alone in their bedroom and they're taking a photo or they're making a video. And so they see it as a very normal way to explore their sexuality, and we know that kids don't have a good concept of consequence. But this idea of it being then weaponized and used against them, that's kind of inevitable, isn't it, in many cases?
Absolutely. And I think, the 35 to 40 thing, I say it's pretty normal in that age group too. With Tinder and any of the multitude of dating apps that are out there, it gets pretty into that digital, outrageous online flirting, sharing images pretty quickly. I've had quite a few friends caught up in that space that have been, threatened, and one of them had some pretty full-on image-based abuse happening that I helped her by referring her to the safety office around that. But, there's a whole heap of this happening across the place. And what I see, and, I'm always fearful of using the wrong terminology in this space, but what I see is nudes and just sharing nudes has become so normalised that kids don't think there's anything at all wrong with that anymore, at all. Masturbation videos are the next thing. There's more of that happening now, where they're still coming and saying, "Oh, miss, this happened," or "this happened," or, mum will call me because the 15-year-old boy has had a video circulated that he thought he was just sharing with a girl. All of those things are happening more and more. It's stepping up because we have a whole generation of kids being educated by Pornhub and stuff like that, because parents don't know how to talk to their kids about pornography and all of those. And there's some really great resources out there in this space, but kids, they just don't even know where to start. And it's difficult. And it's, that's why I often call it parenting at the speed of light, trying to keep one step ahead of your kids every single day of the week, because it's just moving at pace. There's no way that you can keep up with it all without feeling completely overwhelmed.
Kirra, what brought you into this line of work?
That is a very good question, Mia. What happened was I had a big career in the IT business consulting sector, which was always heavily steeped in information security, we used to call it. Now it's just called cybersecurity. So that started, my IT career started in 1991 in Sydney, and I worked in that space and loved it. And it was very, I was very fortunate because I'm a single mum. My son's 23 now, but, as a very young single mother, and I had a very big corporate career at state director level, all of these IT companies that were predominantly men really nurtured me. They really supported me as a single mum. I was able to work from home a few days a week, so I'd commute to Brisbane from Byron for the rest of it, all of those things. So I learned a lot on the job, and I also worked with some of the world's best brains when it came to cybersecurity. Fast forward, I got into a situation with an ex-business associate that we had a bit of a fallout, and this person actually took it upon themselves to bully me so badly online that it just crushed me because I trusted them with every ounce of my being. They knew my deepest, darkest secrets about everything and turned my world upside down. With the cyberbullying that happened was extraordinary. There was hashtags created with, I won't say it because I don't want people to go looking for it.
Yeah.
But, hashtags used that were, describing me, and I knew it was me. There was a few different phones that it was coming in from, accounts created in my name that looked exactly like me that they used to bully themselves to make me look like I was doing the bullying at one point. It was just crushing, even down to some really deep secrets that I'd shared, and they went straight back to the people that were involved in that and, blurted things and used little bits of fact and mixed it up with a whole lot of fiction to try and destroy really strong relationships in my life that fortunately weathered that storm because they saw straight through it.
That must have been so traumatizing for you and given you such an incredible insight into cyberbullying. I mean, the irony of it.
Yeah, it did. Well, at the time I was a lot bigger than I am now, and all of the bullying, because they knew that was my Achilles heel, literally.
Do you mean
all of the bullying was
in
about
size?
it was about my physical appearance, every bit of it. How I looked, what size I was, what I ate, all of that stuff happened. It was really extraordinary. And people used to say, just block it, and you can't.
Yeah.
You cannot block it because they come at you from different phone numbers, and then they come at you from so many different directions. You cannot keep on top of it. And then you'll have friends that think they're doing the right thing, take screenshots and text it to you at 11 o'clock at night, just as you've gone through the whole process of having a bath, drinking tea, sometimes drinking whiskey so that you could actually get some sleep at night. And then 11 o'clock, just as you're dozing off, hey, have you seen this? And it's a screenshot of something else that's popped up somewhere. And so that was relentless and went on for far too long. For me, it went on for about 2.5 years.
Oh, my God. How did you make it stop in the end?
I didn't. I just went quiet. So the best thing I ever did, Mia, and it's the eat your own dog food. It's like the best thing I ever did was I never retaliated, and I could have been so mean, and I could have really, really destroyed some significant relationships in this person's life with what I knew, but I just went completely silent. My mum used to say to me, silence is the loudest scream, and I just went to ground completely, and I got really sick because I bottled it all up and refused to talk to anyone about it back then. And it's only been the last couple of years that not even, maybe a year, that I've been able to speak about it, because that's why I founded Safe On Social, because with court cases and all sorts of stuff that was going on, my whole world was turned upside down. I ended up with autoimmune arthritis, which I just got the all clear from today. I'm totally in remission, so I'm very excited about that. But, all of that happened. I was in a wheelchair. I was gaining weight hand over foot, so everything they were saying was appearing physically even more so. It was just ridiculous.
And it's like people say that you shouldn't call it cyberbullying. You should just call it bullying, because cyberbullying makes it seem like, oh, it's kind of this intangible thing that just happens on this place called the internet. But the effects are the same. And in fact, it's more insidious than face-to-face bullying, because it seeps into your home and your bedroom and your every waking moment. It can.
It did. Absolutely, it did. I wouldn't go into cafes that I knew that this person would go to. Like, my life went from being like literally, I'm from Byron Bay. It's a small town, and I'm from a fourth generation family here. And so I used to be at everything, and then I went to ground. I had two girlfriends. My two best friends were so unbelievably supportive that I don't think I would have survived without them. I really don't.
How are you doing now?
Yeah, all right. Good.
I'm sorry to ask you about that and upset you, but I think that your lived experience informs your work to such a degree in terms of what you do and the empathy and understanding that you have. I think that there are a lot of people who've been at those kind of, I know as a parent, I've been at a lot of those sort of cyber talks, and they come in and they sort of go rah, 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 and they make you feel sort of ashamed and guilty and overwhelmed and hopeless. And in every conversation that I've had with you, I've just felt informed and often like alert, not alarmed. A little bit alarmed, but you've never made me feel bad as a parent. And I think it's probably because of what you've been through and what you understand. You come at it with no judgment.
No judgment. And I never judge kids either when they mess up online. I'm literally the cool auntie in schools. They tell me everything. Same thing. But, just 2 weeks ago, I was speaking to a really big group of teachers in New South Wales, and one of the questions was, what did you do after this? And I remember it so, so clearly. I was in my car not far from where I live, and I was having some pretty, the worst kind of thoughts you can possibly have. And my phone started ringing, and it was my son. And so I chatted to him, and then I went home and got rid of that thought process out of my head, knowing that he needed me still. He was 16, 17 at the time. And I woke up at 3 o'clock the next morning and thought, what do I do? Because I couldn't really work with any of my clients in the Queensland government anymore. All of that, I just wasn't up to it. So I sat at my desk at 3 o'clock in the morning and typed in, I keep people safe on social, and I typed in safeonsocial.com, and the URL was available. And I had at the time, because of everything costing me a ridiculous amount of money in court fees and things like that, I had $68 to my name, and I used $14.99 of that on the URL. And I spent another $32 on registering the business name Safe On Social. And about a week after I'd done that, or not even, maybe 2 days, I rang the principal of Byron Bay High School at the time, a lovely man called Peter King, and said to Peter, this is what I do. Do you want me to come and talk to the kids? Because I've worked in cybersecurity for a long time, and I think I might be able to give them some information that can help them be more empowered in this space. And Peter actually said to me, love you too, but we've actually just had a cancellation at the Far North Coast Regional Principals Conference. Would you like to come and speak at that? And I said, sure. So I did. That was about a week and a half after that phone call. And there was 24 principals there. I've worked with 21 of them every year since. That was 5 years ago. And it just spread like wildfire, word of mouth about what I did and how I did it. And I work with more than 400 schools now across Australia and New Zealand in this space.
We're lucky to have you out there helping, keeping us all safe on social.
Yes, thank you.
I'm so glad that you do what you do.
Yeah, look, you forget that, well, I forget, I should say, that what I do is actually helping people. But when I explained that story in front of the 300 or so teachers a couple of weeks ago, they stood up and clapped. And it was the first time that I'd really shared the story on how I started doing what I do. And I was like, I was really quite shocked that they found it so empowering. And a lovely teacher sent me a message afterwards saying, your vulnerability, because I do get a bit teary when I talk about my case on stage.
I can hear it.
And she said, your vulnerability really empowered me. And I thought that was really lovely for someone to actually take the time to email me that. So keeps me going.
Thanks, Kirra.
Thank you.
How insightful is Kirra? She's calm and reassuring. She's not sensationalist, but she's very practical and she doesn't sugarcoat things, which I just love. She's not about shaming parents. She's about informing us and giving us the tools to help keep kids safe. Growing up online in today's world, like I said in the intro, it's not like how we grew up. You know, our parents worried about things like us drinking or partying or sneaking out of the house and sex. But they were all things that our own parents and even our grandparents had also experienced. So they kind of knew what they were talking about or knew what they were trying to protect us from. After Kirra and I met and we had a few conversations and I sort of compared her to some of the online cyber experts that I had seen in my kids' schools and how she was just so much better, frankly. We got talking about how we could help more people who want to better manage and support and educate their kids about how to experience their lives and live their lives online in a safe and positive way. We really wanted to get rid of the shaming and, you know, this idea of prohibition and banning things, which just isn't realistic. And we wanted to create a toolkit, really, for parents about how to avoid predators, cyberbullying, and even things like how to protect your kids' reputation and getting them to start thinking about the online footprint that they're making. We can't just say, don't use it and ban social media. It's like saying, don't ever get in a car or don't ever cross a busy road. Our jobs as adults are to teach kids how to experience the world safely. And these days, the world is online in so many ways. So we've created the Safe On Social Toolkit. To find out more, you can follow the link in the show notes or head to safeonsocialtoolkit.com. This episode was produced by Bridget Northeast. I'm Mia Friedman, and I'll see you soon.